what your takeaways from SEMA were. And one of the things I wanted to highlight on too was what type of marketing things did you see that kind of caught your eye while you're there? Because obviously, if you haven't been to SEMA, I haven't yet, and I would love to go. This thing, it's massive. There's like 5 conference halls worth of stuff, and it's kind of everything automotive. So my curiosity is to know, like, what were your takeaways from it, and then what things kind of stood out from you marketing wise.
Well, I think initial takeaways were this. I feel like this was the first SEMA post-pandemic that was back to what SEMA was like before the pandemic. The first year that they were back after the pandemic, it was pretty light, and it felt really like there was a lot of people not there. Last year, it felt a little bit more normal, but it still felt like a lot of the international contingency wasn't there. This year felt back full on like SEMA. It's a little bit different because now, since the pandemic, there's an additional hall, which is called the West Hall, which prior to that was just, there was the North, South, and Central Hall. So now you've got a whole additional huge hall. So the people that are coming to SEMA are spread out over an additional hall. So sometimes it feels like there's not as many people, but when you think about the fact that there's maybe the same number of people, they're just spread out over a larger geography, it makes sense. Most of the people that I spoke to at the show said that they felt like day one was a little bit slow. Made sense because it was Halloween. A lot of people stayed home to be with their families. Day 2 and 3 were rocking. Most people had a really good day 2 or 3. And then day 4 always tends to drop off. But overall, I think it was a really good show. I think that, again, it was good to see the vibe kind of fully back on, kind of like a pre-pandemic vibe to a SEMA show.
No, that's awesome to hear. Were there anything marketing wise as far as whether it's a specific, don't have to name any distributors, but what kind of, things kind of jumped out that one you felt like this is going to bring in new people, maybe obviously not for marketing for us, but if it was something as far as a product that kind of jumped out, or something that one of the companies was doing promotionally? I know, having gone to the window film conference, I know like those towels with all the different characters and stuff on them was definitely something I thought was a really good marketing drive, because that seemed to be one of those things that they wanted to get. And obviously one of the things that you started up was the t-shirt draw as far as like the window film pro. So there's definitely like some must-haves that people kind of want. And obviously if anybody's going to grab an item and then if I'm wearing the window film pro shirt, that's free advertising. Was there stuff like that you kind of noticed and was like, oh, that's a really good idea?
I think that first thing is there's, parties at SEMA, whether it's in our industry or outside of our industry, are always a big thing. A lot of companies really rely on the after hours parties to interact with people and to get new people in. And this year was no exception. I think almost every company either has a party or they have a concerted effort to get people out to individualized dinners and things like that after hours. And this year was no exception there. I feel like that some companies, I definitely noticed a lot more companies utilizing geofenced ads at the show, i.e. when you were in the show and you were scrolling Facebook, you were getting a lot of SEMA specific ads. So they knew that you were inside the fence and they were serving you up ads. That was way more prevalent this year than I've ever seen in the past. So, and we actually ran some of those for some of our clients. So, but more so than just the ones that we ran, I saw geofence ads being placed for a lot of other companies as well. I feel like in general, the things that maybe stood out to me a little bit were, companies that were really focusing on the companies I thought were having some success getting people into the booths and things like that were companies that were doing a lot of demos, like having action, having a lot of people in the booth, pulling people in to talk to them and things like that. So I feel like and this is kind of a little bit of an offshoot, but at least in our industry, I think there's a desire again from people that are in the industry to have a genuine physical connection with somebody at a company. I think for a lot of years, the pendulum sort of swung back and people were like only concerned about price. And they were like, I don't really need a sales rep. I don't really need, help. I just want to get the product I want, and I want to get it as cheap as I can. I'm feeling like a lot of people, that pendulum is swinging back to where people really want to have that one-on-one connection with a sales rep, want to have that one-on-one connection with a company so that if they have an issue, they have a actual human being that they know on a personal level that they can reach out to. And I think the companies that are tapping into that are the ones that I tended to notice the largest crowds at their booth and people talking the most positively about. So that's kind of a change from a couple of years ago, because I think that, and I don't know if it's based on the pandemic or what, but I do feel like there's a swing back towards personalized service, working with a company that, and companies to answer your question about marketing, companies that were sort of really pushing that's kind of the direction they're going. I think that was a message that was being well received, not just in our industry, in a variety of other industries that I know individuals in as well. I think there's a movement back towards that more personalized service. So
no, that perfectly answered my question. It's funny. I just got off the phone with a buddy of mine who does marketing overseas. And that's been and it's funny because you're probably the third person in the last like 4 days to kind of mention how marketing is becoming so much more personalized, and it's finding ways that you can specifically help this customer. This specific customer, what are you needing help with? Let's figure out how I can help you. And that's what obviously we've talked about before with kind of the word of mouth type of deal. If you can bring that personalized experience to a customer or client, they're more likely going to talk to their friends and family about like, he understood me. He was actually trying to figure out what I was looking for, and not just kind of giving generic, like, you should try this and this. But when you can be much more specific with a client and trying to figure out exactly what they need and try to figure it out. And obviously it might be a little bit trickier with if there's a lot of window tint companies, but if you're asking a mom, like, what are the reasons why you want to have this window film up, or trying to preserve your vehicle so you're getting paint protection film, like asking questions that are actually going to get more than just a yes or no answer, that you're going to actually figure out the reason why that they're trying to have, the reason why they're coming in, and figuring out like this specific product or this specific service is going to help. And I think that's key to bringing in and having that retention of having those people coming back.
Well, I think that whether it's B2B or B2C, I mean, I think it all is the same. I mean, you have nuanced things even when you're working with B2B. There's a lot of people like in our industry that are trying to move from doing specifically automotive more and more into flat glass. Well, a lot of times some of those jobs have a little bit of dating on them, things like that. So, there's a cash flow issue that sometimes comes up. So, having a supplier that's willing to sit down with you and understand where you're trying to go with your business and try to, manage their program such that it can facilitate you, versus a big company that's like, this is our program, there's no deviation, it is what it is. I think people are looking for a little bit of that individualized touch and to feel like they're being heard, and the company they're working with is trying to do what they can to help them. I think that's true of both B2B and B2C. I think we went all the way out to the extreme of, we don't even need tellers at store. We don't even need clerks at stores. Just give us the automatic checkout, give us the, so that we do it. And now I think you're seeing that it's like, now you go into some stores, and I don't want to call any out by name, but you go in there and you're hard pressed to even find anybody that can help you with anything. And I know I've started to get to the point where I avoid those stores, because if I need to ask somebody something, I don't want to go there and hound them, but it's like sometimes you just need to ask a basic question, and you literally cannot find anybody in the store, and there's not even anybody at the front to check you out. You got to check yourself out. So I feel like the pendulum is swinging a little bit back. So anything a company can do, and again, we're talking a lot about operations and sales and things like that with what we're talking about right now. But I think even on the marketing side, if you can pass that message along that you are there to help, like, walk somebody through the process, you're there to consult with them to make sure that they're making the right choice, whatever the case may be, I do feel like there's momentum back in that direction. And I think that if you can tie into that, it's probably going to be beneficial, especially in an age where people are finding it feels like everybody's pulling away from that and you're sort of on your own in an Amazon world where it's like, hey, buyer beware. There's no help anywhere. Just,
Yeah, I think it's, and we'll wrap it up here, but I think a lot of times too, it's understanding, one, being efficient and using these AI features and stuff, I think is one thing, but it doesn't mean that you have to do everything that way. I think you still, like you said, have to have that human element of, you got to know how to talk to somebody and be able to be personable and understand what they're looking for versus just like taking what they need and putting it into an AI server and like, all right, this is what you're going to get. It's you have to kind of diversify yourself in a way that's going to be able to understand both segments. There's definitely a need for the human intelligence side of it, what we used to call in the Army, versus the technical intelligence. So you got to take both of those and kind of put it into like a nice little bundle wrap and be able to help your customer out.
Well, and I mean, I know I spent a lot of time today getting back from SEMA on the phone with a lot of clients that wanted to talk. And, I do see, even within our own business, the clients we're working with, there's a desire to say, hey, I want to jump on it. We're going to have a call later this week that just got scheduled today, that want to jump on a call and just be like, hey, let's just talk about, let's talk about the holiday period. What are we going to do? Let's brainstorm a little bit versus like, maybe a couple of years ago, people were like, you're the expert, just do your thing, like type of thing, which is good because I actually would rather have people involved and make sure we're doing the right thing. So I feel like if I owned a business right now, I'd be thinking about things that I can do to really send the message to my customers that we're a little bit different. We care a little bit more. We want to understand your needs. We want to understand your expectations. And here's what we're going to try to do to fulfill those expectations and make sure you're totally satisfied versus, I think there was a couple of years where business was so good. People, I don't even want to say intentionally, but people just got a little bit cocky that as long as they, were open, business was going to come in. And I think now people are pulling back a little bit and people have some choices and they're using their ability to take their money elsewhere to say, okay, if I don't get the warm fuzzy from somebody when I talk to them on the phone, I'll find somebody that I do feel that way about.